2018 NBA Draft. 2 picks on the board, Atlanta Hawks on the clock with the 3rd overall pick. Over on ESPN2, Brian Windhorst is cooking. Windy knows this Hawks pick is a big moment, and he's really juicing it for television.
In the Atlanta draft room is what's going to be the most important thing that happens in this draft. Whether they make a trade in the next 5 minutes, all the offers are coming in. Luka Doncic is available right now. Is there a team out there that wants Luka Doncic? Yes. We're either going to have it now or we're not. Travis Schlenk is going to establish the early part of his general managing tenure on what he does in the next 5 minutes.
Of course, if you care about this stuff, you're also checking Twitter, so you've just seen the Woj tweet that Windy will now read live on the air.
Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting Atlanta and Dallas have swapped. It's going to be the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas Mavericks
no players involved in the deal.
And now you're just shaking your head. Somehow, despite holding the 5th pick in the draft, the Dallas Mavericks will get Luka Doncic. Of course. Donnie Nelson did it again. Hey, real quick. I want to let you know that this video is part of our new mini-series called The Donnie Expedition. It's all about the history of international players in the NBA draft, and we are only able to do it because of all of our patrons. If you want to see more special stuff like this and see it exclusively or sooner than everyone else, please come check out Secret Base on Patreon. Okay, back to me. Welcome back to the Draft Cavern. This is every single pick in the history of the NBA draft. Sign the waiver and pause if you want to read it, nerd. Okay, let's start with a 2018 opinion. Luka Doncic not being the first pick in this draft was ridiculous. I'm not saying that going 3rd overall is some great insult, and I'm not saying Doncic will one day go down as the best player from this draft class. All I mean to say is that in 2018, Luka Doncic was one of the most obvious future superstars in the history of the NBA draft. He was the safest bet, the most promising prospect in that class by far, at the time. And yet, multiple teams passed on Doncic while another one scrambled to get him. To understand that contrast, we must follow 2 intertwined stories: the career of Donnie Nelson and the whole history of foreign players in the NBA draft. 1970 was the first time an NBA team drafted foreign players directly from abroad. These guys hadn't gone to college in the US. Here is the first such player to actually play for an NBA team. And right around here is when Donnie Nelson got involved. Donnie is the son of NBA legend Don Nelson. After Donnie's own basketball career hit a dead end, he devoted himself to coaching and scouting. In the late 80s, the younger Nelson made his own name by bringing Sarunas Marciulionis straight from the Soviet Union to his father Don's Golden State Warriors. Scouting international talent became Donnie's thing. In 1997, Don Nelson, the father, became Dallas Mavericks general manager. Months later, he appointed himself head coach, too. And then, Nelly hired his 35-year-old son mid-season, announcing right away that Donnie would skip the line and succeed him as head coach in 2 years. That is an extremely unusual way for an assistant coach to come aboard. Then, that new assistant convinced his dad to use a precious 1998 lottery pick on a gangly German jump shooter. Big balls, Donnie. But it worked out. Dirk Nowitzki's stardom proved one of Donnie Nelson's guiding principles, that excellent NBA prospects could flow to the league through any number of pipelines, not just American schools. And soon thereafter, Pau Gasol and Yao Ming also became NBA superstars, totally justifying the novelty and the perceived risk of picking non-college foreigners near the top of the draft. Of course, foreigner is way too vast a category. Dirk, Pau, Yao, Peja Stojakovic, these are varied players with varied backgrounds who get grouped together only because they weren't born in the US and didn't play college ball. That describes most people in human history. And yet it seems like those guys getting picked early in their drafts and then becoming stars, maybe sort of like bewitched some NBA GMs? Because here we enter the upside-down era of international drafting. NBA teams in the 2000s and the early 2010s found some great players overseas late in the draft. Several of these guys became legit NBA stars and should have been tippy-top picks. But then if you look at the guys from overseas who were tippy-top picks, Now, high draft picks bust all the time for a million different reasons, college players included. But to an American audience, the college guys were familiar, orthodox picks. Andrea Bargnani was a gaunt, mysterious white guy with gelled hair and a girl's name. When Bargnani arrived, he got lumped in with different guys from different countries that had nothing to do with him. They were just foreign. And when he struggled, somehow entire continents worth of basketball players became even more suspect. That is absurd, and it's xenophobic, and it betrays the kind of race essentialism Americans have about basketball. The international players didn't prove anything about each other or about, the world. But perhaps their draft order demonstrated that the NBA's international scouting apparatus was out of calibration. For over a decade, while plenty of excellent foreign players entered the league through the draft, teams picking up in the lottery failed to select a single international non-college player who went on to become an all-star. Most of them didn't even come close. So if Donnie Nelson started a trend by using a primo draft pick on Dirk Nowitzki, the trend was souring. It was warping, oversaturating. So what about Donnie himself? Well, despite being hired as his dad's eventual successor, Donnie did not become Mavs head coach. In 2000, ostensibly the year Don Nelson would pass the reins to his son, the whole Dallas franchise changed hands. .com bubble beneficiary Mark Cuban bought majority ownership of the team. Upon meeting Cuban, Don Nelson said, forget it. My son should not succeed me as coach. I don't know what changed his mind, but Don remained GM and coach, which brought Donnie to a fork in the road. In 2002, the Denver Nuggets offered Donnie Nelson their head coaching job. Dad immediately offered to step down as Mavs coach, but Mark Cuban hatched a different plan to keep both Nelsons in place. Cuban promoted Donnie Nelson to Mavericks president of basketball operations. This is a funky setup. On the sideline, Dad was head coach and son remained his assistant. In the front office, Dad was GM and son was president. Exactly who was whose boss was sort of a gray area, which would become important later. In the meantime, the Nelsons' zany scouting adventures continued. Mark Cuban proved willing to foot the bill, even when the bill got kind of crazy. In 2002, the Nelsons visited a gym in Belgrade to watch an undrafted Serbian forward named Ognjen Askrabic. Askrabic didn't show up, but hey, how about that? Darko Milicic did. The 17-year-old Serbian big man Donnie had called the LeBron James of Europe. Whether or not the Nelsons intended to watch Milicic play, they were breaking a rule by doing so. Fines and suspensions came down. I am so thankful that the Fort Worth Star-Telegram sent a photographer to document that suspension, or else I would not have believed that the Nelsons watched their own home opener at a Dave & Buster's while wearing custom prisoner outfits. The irony here is that, guilty or not, the Mavericks were a perennial playoff team. We will never know if Donnie would have burned a lottery pick on the likes of Darko because the Mavs of this era never drafted that high, with one exception. After a disappointing 2004 season, Dallas traded for the 5th pick in that summer's draft. True to form, Donnie gazed abroad. On draft day, Don Nelson heard Donnie talking about drafting the big Russian at 5. That would be Pavel Podkolzin. This came as a surprise to the elder Nelson, who, I will remind you, was the team's general manager. Donnie and Don met privately in the bathroom, where son informed father that he, President Donnie, had been authorized by Mark Cuban to run draft night. Dismayed, Don pleaded with Donnie, if not as a GM, then as his dad, do not use the 5th pick on Pavel Podkolzin. And he didn't. Dallas drafted Devin Harris, a college kid, 5th overall. And then they were able to get the big Russian 16 picks later. Now, the only reason we know about any of this is Don Nelson's falling out with Mark Cuban, his resignation in 2005, and transcripts from the subsequent lawsuit. Donnie took over his dad's vacated GM title, which is sort of bitterly poetic because Don may have saved Donnie's job that day in the men's room. Picking Pavel Podkolzin 5th overall instead of 21st would have been a disaster on par with the most notorious international busts of the era. The big Russian was just not fit for the NBA. Devin Harris, meanwhile, was very important to the Mavs after Steve Nash's shocking departure, then became a key element in their trade for Jason Kidd, who was in turn a key element in Dallas's run to the title. Oh, yeah. With Dirk leading the way, Donnie Nelson's Dallas Mavericks won the franchise's first ever championship in 2011. And, that's the point. Duh, I know, but Donnie Nelson felt compelled to say that out loud sometimes. Even while reiterating that winning was always Dallas's goal, Nelson spoke of international basketball like that was his true purpose. Here, I will remind you that Donnie got into scouting through his stint in a traveling Christian sports ministry. That relentless international fixation raised eyebrows, especially before Dallas won it all. Nelson spent part of every year zipping around, eyeing obscure prospects from far-flung nations. None of these guys were the next Dirk, and most of them didn't even come close. And Nelson got some flack for it. That 2011 title shut some critics up, but it didn't quench Donnie. In 2013, the Mavericks finally fell out of postseason contention. Donnie held his first lottery pick in years and grew enamored with a relative nobody, a gawky Nigerian Greek teenager playing for a second-tier club in Athens. Most mock drafts had him much lower than the Mavericks' 13th overall pick. Still, Donnie told Mark Cuban he would risk everything to get his guy. Cuban said no. The Mavs owner preferred cap space anyway. Dallas traded their pick, and Donnie's beloved Greek kid went 15th overall to Milwaukee. Yet another future international superstar picked outside the lottery. All I can conclude is that executives got overexcited by Dirk and Yao and company, and then got spooked by the results of their own overexcitement, that upside-down era. Decision makers holding lottery picks grew needlessly wary of prospects in overseas leagues. They couldn't believe their eyes even when the truth was obvious. I'm not saying Giannis himself was obvious, but in this case, the truth was always obvious. This photo is from a Slovenian news website. I tracked it down because of something Goran Dragic once said. Here is Dragic with the basketball club Union Olimpija on the day they won the 2008 Slovenian League Championship. That summer, by the way, Dragic would become yet another foreign player picked late in the draft who then blossomed into an NBA star. Here, Dragic is 21, but he looks like a baby, especially compared to this teammate who is a full 12 years older than Dragic and at this point already had a 9-year-old son. The son is right here. He wasn't on the team, obviously, but the adults in this photo had already noticed that something was special about Luka Doncic. Luka grew up around Slovenian pro basketball teams because of his father, Sasha Doncic's career. Olimpija coaches set Luka up with the other 8-year-olds in their training program and then realized after literally 16 minutes that he was much too good for his own age group. This continued. At every level, Luka was bigger, better, and smarter on the court than all of his peers and basically all the older kids too. A huge child with sparkling touch and the brain of a seasoned point guard. Real Madrid signed Doncic away from Slovenia before he was even done with puberty. Madrid trained him beside their stable of excellent veteran guards until the first possible moment Luka himself was able to join the senior team. That was 2015, when he was just 16 years old, the youngest player ever rostered by the Spanish powerhouse. Luka grew to 6'8" with long arms, and he never lost that innate court vision. Plus, he could shoot that thing from anywhere. Entering adulthood, Doncic became a role player and then a real contributor for Madrid. And then, in the 2018 season, the year he turned 19 years old, Luka went nuclear. Youngest Spanish League MVP ever. And a title. Youngest EuroLeague MVP ever. And Finals MVP. And a title. Doncic voluntarily declared for the 2018 NBA draft and arrived in the United States wielding that resume. Luka had been a known, pedigreed prodigy since yay high. Now he was a 6'8", 19-year-old with a play style ideal for the NBA, holding basically every accolade from perhaps the, second best basketball competition on earth. This was one of the most qualified players ever to enter the NBA draft. And yes, he was born, raised, and employed overseas. He had that one thing in common with, Mario Hezonja. Doncic had competed against American players, NBA players, many times, but he did not play college basketball. Coaches, players, scouts, journalists, everyone who had studied Luka said, do not fall into that comparison trap. This kid is special. When the Phoenix Suns won the draft lottery, then immediately hired Luka's Team Slovenia coach, it seemed obvious where they were headed with the first pick. Nope. Then surely Sacramento Kings GM Vlade Divac, himself a former EuroLeague standout turned NBA star, would know to ignore a relevant precedent and just take the kid at 2. Nope. Nothing against DeAndre Ayton or Marvin Bagley, but I truly believe that teams preferred the college guys to Luka not because of size or fit or whatever, but because so many of these totally unrelated foreign names had proven to be the wrong picks. Executives talked themselves out of a special player, a sure star. Donnie Nelson did not. When Luka slipped to 3, his long simmering conversation with the Hawks turned to full boil. Donnie and the Mavs scouts had been clamoring to trade for Atlanta's 3rd pick and grab Luka, and this time they weren't alone. The Dallas analytics department loved Doncic, and that's what really won Mark Cuban over. Cuban finished the deal by going over Donnie's head and just contacting the Hawks owner directly. So Atlanta was the 3rd team to pass on Luka. They too preferred a college player, wearing shorts. The Hawks and Mavs did their deal. This was another pretty nice draft night for Donnie Nelson's Mavericks. None of these people lasted in Dallas, but it was cool for a moment, at least on the court. Luka arrived just in time to learn from Dirk, and he proved his NBA excellence much faster than his mentor once did. Rookie of the Year, All-Star by year 2, NBA leading scorer, and Western Conference champion by year 6. For the Mavericks, Luka magic stopped right there, but not because of anything Doncic did. Simultaneous with Luka's rise, Sports Illustrated and an independent investigator uncovered a cesspool of grim behavior in Dallas's front office. Then came even more allegations. Donnie Nelson left the Mavericks in 2021. Then he sued Mark Cuban, alleging that Cuban had fired him as retaliation for Nelson reporting an instance of sexual misconduct. The suit was later settled, but Donnie's time with the Mavericks was done. Then Cuban sold majority ownership of his team to Ghouls, and then the Ghouls traded away Luka Doncic. Nasty stuff, top to bottom. Fuck the Mavs. But this isn't about the Mavs. This is about basketball talent. There is basketball talent everywhere on earth. Donnie Nelson carried the torch for a long line of NBA scouts who believed in that talent and reached for it. If the pipelines Donnie and company helped lay ran dry or twisted around themselves in the late 2000s, then maybe this generation of stars helped straighten them back out. Still, teams will scout poorly at the top of the draft. Still, they will find gems late in the draft. And still, NCAA programs will sometimes spot these guys first. Of course. But these pipelines will not stop flowing. And what keeps someone like Donnie Nelson involved is the opportunity to strengthen them and to build more. So many vast swaths of our planet, huge countries and basketball-loving countries among them, remain relatively unexplored by NBA scouts. These places do not lack talent. Some lack funds or infrastructure, leagues. Some just need time and attention. All that is building as we speak. New opportunities, new pipelines. New flags adorn the walls of our draft cavern each passing year. Everywhere on Earth, people are hooping. Everywhere on Earth, a few of those people have what it takes to join us here. We'll check back someday. Until then, happy scouting. Thanks as always for watching. If you want to see more stuff like this without ads long before everyone else sees it, then subscribe to Secret Base on Patreon. If you want to just stick around on YouTube, then I got some more stuff for you to watch right here.